topic that we're going to be studying now is not an exhaustive, like a discussion of the idea of integrity. It's just a couple of sources that I had the honor of learning over the last little bit, and each one of them sheds a little bit of light on, how we should behave, not just in the Beit Midrash or a home, but how we should behave in business. What's an ethical way to be, to be a business person. For those of you who are, we have a daily study of Gemara, the Daf Hayomi. So the Gemara that we're going to be looking at was in the Daf just under 2 weeks ago. So it jogged my memory. That's why I thought it'd be nice to have a look at some of these things now. So if you have a look at the top, can you have a look at all these? These are all real, adverts. But are any of them unethical or like inappropriate from Halacha? So you've got over here, 4 out of 5 pediatricians recommend Gerber, but you don't know who they are and how much they're being paid. You don't know what that means. And then over here, as your dentist, I would recommend these cigarettes.
That one definitely doesn't seem ethical because no doctor would be recommending you to smoke.
Yeah. Also, it's not as a dentist. You follow what I'm saying? Meaning, I happen to be a dentist, and I like. You follow, but it's not. I'm not. It's a little bit misleading. And then over here, this one I think is not so bad. We make the world's best mattress, because I think you can say that. Because everyone knows they're talking rubbish. You know what I mean? I mean, let's say, as your dentist, I recommend. I think that's perhaps more problematic because I'm sort of manipulating you. But when you say this is the world's best mattress, everybody knows that's just meaningless. You follow? So that one is less worrying to me. Do you following what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then over here, I don't like this one about Rice Krispies. It's basically sugar. But at the bottom there it says like builds up your children's immunity. That's also rubbish. That's not, like parents will fall for that. It's terrible. You know what I mean? I'll just tell you where, now looking at that one over there, it reminds me of when my wife and I, we really had a very, very difficult situation when, as a new parent, which was 20-something years ago, you go to the baby shop to buy all the stuff. Oh, it's terrible. They rip you off because you say, oh, do you want your baby to be comfy? Oh, then buy this. This is just 600 shekel. You want them to, and then you spend 30,000 shekel on. You get home and you realize it's all shtuth. It's all like rubbish. Yeah, no, but it's a manipulative moment. You follow? So the question is, because I know what stealing is. I know you're not allowed to steal. You're also not allowed to gamble. You're also not allowed to lend with ribbit. You're not allowed to lend somebody money, and then when they pay you back, you shouldn't lend money at all because of the problem of ribbit, of taking interest, because you're not providing anything. You follow? So the question is it possible to be a successful Jewish religious businessman? So the problem is, if you're too strict, so then there's no competition, and that's not a good thing. But if you're too lenient, then you're sort of manipulating people. So it's actually a very, very difficult balance that we're going to see Halacha navigating over here to try to, on the one hand, allow people to compete with one another, because competition is healthy. Especially, we live in a capitalist society where they love competition. So that's sort of like the world in which we live. And if we were too harsh, it would be very difficult for people to make a parnassah, because these monopolies would take over the world. And then that's, however bad competition is, that's even worse. You follow what I'm saying? So it's a tricky sort of situation to navigate. What we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 issues together. These aren't the 3 issues. There's probably 15 other issues. But these are 3 issues that appear on the sheets. And we could probably do many, many, many more shiurim on this. So at the end of our discussion today, nobody is going to be an expert on Jewish business ethics. But we will have some guide, some sort of directions. We'll see examples of rabbis navigating that difficult balance. On the one hand, allowing competition, because that's a good thing, but on the other hand, maintaining integrity. You follow? I'll just tell you one little thing. Maybe we'll look about this one day. The very, very first article, this might not be true, but one of the first topics upon which Chief Rabbi Sachs, who has now passed away a few years ago, but certainly one of the most important Jewish leaders of this, like in his writings, in recent times, one of his first topics he dealt with was like the role. How do we deal with the poor in society? How do we, live in a society that cares for everybody? It's sort of distribution of wealth and figuring out, how an ethical society should operate. If we leave everything to the markets, then it's not going to work. And if it's too strict, then you've got no competition. And that balance was one of the first topics that he thought about. So I thought it's a good thing for us to talk about today. Okay, let's start. So the Mishnah tells us in Bava Metzia, Rabbi Yehuda taught, Lo yichalek hachenvani klayot ve'egozim letinakot, mipnei shehu margilan lavo etzlo. Rabbi Yehuda said, you're not allowed to stand outside your shop and give out treats to the children. Because what you do is you lure the children into your shop. But they're not coming into your shop because it's a better shop. They're coming into the shop because you're bribing them in. Once the kids are in, then the parents are in. You follow? Mm-hmm. That's why in all the shops it's terrible. Have you noticed all the sweets are all on the bottom shelf so that parents have to pull their kids away from it? So is that right? Is that ethical? Is that the right thing to do? So Rabbi Yehuda said, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're luring the children into the shop. And by luring the children into the shop, the parents will shop there. But it's not because you've got a better service, it's because you're pulling them in. You follow? That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. However, the Chachamim, the rabbis, say you are allowed to. You hear that? Now, why do the rabbis say you are allowed to? So the Gemara explains. Huh?
They're in favor of a free market.
Yeah, right. But no, they go further. They say that shopkeeper A giving out sweets to the children is not doing anything that shopkeeper B couldn't also do. Meaning, if I see that shopkeeper A gives out sweets to all the kids, and as a result everyone shops in his shop, oh, well, you've hit the strategy, so I'll do the same. I'll also start giving out kids. And then they'll, not giving out kids, that would be odd, giving out sweets to the children, and now that will also lure the children into the shop. Meaning, his strategy is a strategy that I could also use. You follow? And since his is just as good as mine, therefore it's fine. You follow what I'm saying? We can imply from the words of the rabbis that what would be an inappropriate thing is if I were to use a strategy that you couldn't use. You follow? If I'm doing something that you can't do, then that would be a problem. You follow? Does that make sense to you?
So what if I can afford to undercut the market, but you can't?
So I think that's okay. I think that's part of how competition works. You know, some people have more. So every society.
What's an example of something that I could do that you can't?
So I'll give you two examples. I'll give you one example from when I was a child. It's not a fair example, but it's an example nevertheless. When I was I grew up in a place called Golders Green. I don't know if you ever heard of Golders Green. Golders Green is in London, and it's one of the largest Jewish communities in London. I don't know if, it's not, there are a couple of places in London where Jews live, but I would say one of the larger chunk of Jews in London is in Golders Green. In Golders Green, there's a main road called Golders Green Road. If ever you go there, they're very creative on their names there. And when I was a little boy, on Golders Green Road, there were two huge kosher supermarkets. One of the kosher supermarkets was owned by Jews, and strangely, the other huge Jewish kosher supermarket was owned by non-Jews. Now, one year on Erev Pesach, there's always a big debate. I mean, I've never ran a supermarket, so I wouldn't know this very well, but there's always like a tension as you get towards Pesach. When are you going to switch over? On Purim, you're selling all the stuff for Mishloach Manot, and then pretty soon after that, you have to stop selling all the Chometz, and you start selling all the Pesach stuff. So it means the shop has to be closed for a day, half a day, as you do as a shop, because you have to clear it out and then bring all the new stuff in. So the non-Jewish shop used to work until like 3 minutes before Shabbat, and then it will close for Shabbat because no Jews were going there. And then on Shabbat, they did this big switch over, and then Motzei Shabbat, straight after Shabbat, they would open the shop. Everyone could go in and buy all their Pesach shopping, and the Jews just couldn't do that because they didn't have they couldn't have people working in the Jewish shop on Shabbat. So the non-Jewish shop had an unfair advantage over the Jewish shop. Now, I know they're not Jews, and therefore they're not bound by what the Gemara is saying over here, but many of the rabbis in the community felt, based a little bit perhaps on this Mishnah over here, that if you were to buy at the non-Jewish shop, you would be supporting people who had an unfair advantage over the Jews. And therefore, they said not to buy at the non-Jewish kosher supermarket, rather to buy in the Jewish kosher supermarket. And indeed, a few years later, the non-Jewish kosher supermarket closed down, and now there's just the big kosher Jewish supermarket. Okay, so that's one example. Is that clear to everyone? There's another example. It's a halacha called masig gvul. Let's say, I'm going to try to demonstrate. Let's say I have a shop. My shop, I have a bakery, okay? And my bakery is at the end of a cul-de-sac. Do you know what a cul-de-sac is? A cul-de-sac is a road, a non-through road.
A dead-end street.
Dead-end street. Yeah, like you'd get to the end of the street and there's a house there instead of road. You follow? So you drive in turn. So my shop is at the end of the street. So if somebody else were to set up a bakery on the corner of the street, so you'd have to walk past their bakery in order to get to my bakery, and like the smells is. So then they have an unfair advantage over me because they've opened up a shop, and the only way to get to my shop is via their shop. You follow? Now there are various limitations to explain when this concept of masig gvul might apply. If there's a very big community and they need two bakeries, then there might not be a problem because that there's enough in the community to support both. But if there aren't enough people to support both, then this person, in opening up their shop in a way that has an unfair advantage over mine, because I'm hungry and I have to smell their shop on the way to my shop. So everyone's going to go to their shop, everyone's going to go to my shop, and I'm going to lose out. You follow? In that situation, and also in our supermarket example, even the Chachamim would agree with Rabbi Huda because that's unfair advantage. It's not person A doing, in a
free market.
Exactly. Now, in your example, let's say he can afford to give out sweets, and I can't afford to give out sweets. Well, that's just, I'm afraid to say, that's not a mahuti. What I mean to say, it's not like the difference between what I'm able to do and what you're able to do is not inbuilt in the example. It just so happens that the moment my bank account is this and your bank account is that, and therefore I'm able to do A, B, and C, and you're able to do D. You follow?
Yeah.
But it's not inbuilt into the situation. It's only when it's inbuilt. Does that make clear to everybody? Okay. So we looked at the Gemara, and now we can look at the Rambam, who takes what we just read and clarifies it halacha l'maaseh. So the Rambam in the laws of sale writes, do you see this? Umotar lachen vali. A shopkeeper is allowed to give out klayot ve'egozim, nuts and sweets, letinokot, u'leshivchot kadei leharken lano vo'itzah. Give it to children and to servants in order that they should come to his shop. Ufochet mishar shebashuk kadei leharbot b'mekifim mimenu. He's allowed to undercut the market. Ve'im b'nei hashuk yicholim la'akev alav ve'im b'zeh gneivat dat. That's not that's not misleading, because everyone can see what I'm doing, and everyone else could do it as well. You follow? It's not that I'm doing something that they couldn't do. So point number one, let's say about marketing is good. Do you see how this is like a lovely little example of, we're not saying that marketing is bad or a lost leader is bad. A lost leader is fine. You know, like if I'm selling chickens for 2 shekel, I'm just laughing because that's really not the example that you would give here. Here you're giving it like a falafel. Do you know what I mean? Let's say, like they
There was a butcher I was going to. They were.
I forgot Zacharias here.
They were,
I apologise.
They were selling chicken wings for 3.5 shekels a kilo.
I hope you bought.
Everything else it was like normal price or expensive. But I would just go there and get like.
So that's fine. That's fine to do that. There's nothing wrong with that because everyone can do it. You follow? It's not an unfair advantage over everybody else. It's just utilizing, your situation. Is that clear to everybody? That's point 1 of 3. Joy, any other comments, questions, thoughts? Good. Okay, now let's move on to point number 2. If for those, observant people, you'll notice that source number 2 is a continuation of source number 1. Do you see we're in Bava Metzia Daf Samach Amud Aleph? We're now in Bava Metzia Daf Samach Amud Bet. But we're on the same page. Okay. So this is a very, very interesting little piece of Gemara. Listen what the Gemara says over here. Ein mafar chasin lo et ha'adam v'lo et ha'behema v'lo et ha'kelim. You're not allowed to paint. This is talking about items for sale. So there's a brighter. Ein masar batin et ha'behema ve'ein nofchin b'kerbayim ve'ein shorin et ha'basar b'mayim. You're not allowed to soak meat in water. So the Gemara explains it over here. What the objection is to somebody who's making something look better than it is. Am I making myself clear? So let's say when you soak milk in order to soak meat, to make it look wetter. Make it juicier than it really is. Yeah. Somebody told me a terrible thing. It's probably, I don't know if this is true, about that when there's a bowl of cornflakes out on the cover of a cornflakes box. So it's not in milk, it's in glue.
I've seen it.
Is that rubbish? Is that true?
They're not allowed to do that anymore in America.
Commercial.
Now commercials, they can't in America. They have to use real food now. So now there's this whole thing where you have people who are food artists that use real food and you have to use cameras. It can't be digitally. It's crazy. It's a new law with them. Because in the 90s, it used to be all plastic food on TV.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all based on this Gemara over here about you're not allowed to make something appear like A when really it is B. And I'll tell you an interesting story. There is I work with Olim here in Jerusalem. So there's a very, very sweet guy who made Aliyah. He's a religious, even Haredi. And he lived, before he came to Israel, it's a very, very unusual job. He lived in New York, and he was a celebrity photographer. Do you know what that means?
Haredi celebrity photographer.
I know, isn't that crazy?
It is.
He used to walk around. I know, but I'm not going to get into exactly what he did. The point of the story is, if he was walking up and down in Manhattan, and then he would see people, he would take pictures of them, and then sell those pictures to magazines. The problem is, when he came to Israel, his profession was less. I don't know. It's like
No one cares here.
Yeah, I mean, there are many, Baruch Hashem, Gedolei Yisrael here, and wonderful people, but sort of the idea that he could sell a picture of somebody for, I don't know, $50,000, a picture of someone having a cup of tea. There aren't that many opportunities to do that here in Israel. I'm only telling you this story because he then decided, and he took a career switch, and he became a product photographer. So if, let's say, I want to sell something on Amazon or something like that, so you would call him, and he would take pictures of the product from all angles, then it looks really wonderful, and then everybody would want to buy it. You follow? So he took his photography skills and moved them to a new niche. And that's mamash what we're talking about over here, the Gemara over here, that tells us, and you're not allowed to mislead people in the way that you sell items. You follow? Now, if you have a look at the Gemara is sort of a bit split. In one place, one brighter, the Gemara says you are allowed to paint, and then the Gemara later on says you're not allowed to paint. And then the Gemara explains, how do I reconcile? In one place, I am allowed to enhance.
From a cursory reading, it looks like they're differentiating between types of things that are being sold. So, like, for example, one of the things that I saw here is, where was it? Rabbi permitted arrows to be painted, right? So, for example, if I'm someone selling arrows and he's selling arrows, right, and I want to attract customers, he wants to attract customers, so I could come up with 3 different designs of color schemes for my arrows that would attract the eye of a customer, and they'll come in and they want to buy my arrows instead of his, even though they're the same arrow. Whereas, as opposed to if I have a piece of meat and he has a piece of meat and it's the same meat, but then I start, putting extra water in my meat, right? That was one of the examples that we said you can't do, right?
Right.
My product in a way.
Right. Correct. Yes. So yeah, that's true. You're right. That if I'm doing something that's just to attract, it's not really changing the product. It's just exactly. If I'm catching your eye, that's fine. But if I'm doing more than catching your eye, then it's wrong.
Deceiving you, then that's wrong.
Right, correct. That's one. But the Gemara makes another distinction between new items and old items. And the Gemara says that I'm allowed to enhance new items, but I'm not allowed to enhance old items. Why? So maybe the best is like if you imagine a car. So if I'm buying a new car, so everybody knows what a new car looks like. So if I enhance it, it's not like I'm not changing anything, because I know everybody who buys it knows exactly what it is. The painting is only to catch someone else's eye, to go back to what Pinchas was saying. But if I'm painting or enhancing an old item, even arrows, if I'm painting something old, then there is a danger that I'm not just painting it, but I'm covering something. You follow?
Or I could trick you into thinking it's new and charge
you correct, exactly. For a new item, I know exactly what the specs are. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Specs. So new items, you know the specs. So you can paint it, catch an eye, make whatever signs you like. Because when the person buys it, he or she knows the specs. And the painting is only to attract, the people should see it. But an old item, I don't know the specs of an old item. You follow? And the painting might give me a wrong impression of the item. And therefore, you're not allowed to paint old items. You're only allowed to paint new items. Is that clear? That's the Gemara's distinction. So I'm allowed to paint in order to draw the eye, but I'm only allowed to draw the eye if you know the specs. But I can't draw the eye and also mislead you, because you'll see it and maybe I'll want you to think that it's Aleph, Bet, V'Gimel when it's really just Aleph, Bet. Is that clear to everybody? Joy? Okay, I'm going to look at the Shulchan Aruch on what we just read, who really corroborates. If you have a look at this over here, the Shulchan Aruch writes, Asur leramot b'nei adam. The Shulchan Aruch that we're reading is based on the Rambam, and the Rambam is based on the Gemara that we just saw. You're not allowed to cheat people. Cohn, im yesh mum b'makacho, in this item that's being sold, there's a blemish in it. Tzarich lohodio lo lakoch. You have to tell them about it. V'am v'imu oved kochavim. Even if the person isn't Jewish, meaning you're not allowed to cheat anybody. Lo yimkor lo basar nevelo b'cheskat shchuta. V'av lignov dat habriot b'dvarim shemareh she'oseh b'shvilo eino oseh azur. You're not allowed to mislead people. So the painting business is allowed to catch the eye, but not to mislead. Now, how does the Gemara distinguish between misleading or just to catch your eye? So if it's new, then I can't mislead you. But if it's old, there's a possibility that I might mislead you. So in the time of the Gemara, they said, you're only allowed to paint new things, but you're not allowed to paint old things. Which we're then translating into the Shulchan Aruch to say that you're only allowed to catch the eye, but not to mislead. If there's a mum, you have to say it. You follow? Is that clear? That's point number 2. How are you doing, Fabricio?
I have
Ken.
a question. This misleading and cheating in the marketing. Sometimes people can say, for example, it can be food, it can be like some supplement, for example, and say not directly by using the customer's voice. Say, I take this for half a year, 1 year, and I became more younger, for example. Feel like it is, and the people buy this a lot. Then it can be somehow cheating by advertising.
Yes, that doesn't sound good to me.
No, but sometimes in some country you have restriction, but it's not directly the voice of some people who feel became younger, and it's can be some misleading for people who want some new things.
Yeah, that would be a problem, according to what we're saying just now.
So it's according to Halacha doesn't work.
Yeah, that's non-ideal. Yeah. There are many, I know in Israel right now, especially with Olim, there's a real business in online sales. You know what I mean? I haven't thought about it, but when you're speaking, it reminds me a little bit. Then I think it probably is a bit problematic. Let's say I'm selling this bottle, right? And you're selling this bottle, right? So my bottle is being sold on Amazon, and your bottle's also being sold on Amazon. So can I employ people to write bad reviews on this item in order that people will buy this item? You follow?
Absolutely not.
Huh?
Absolutely not. That one should be obvious.
Huh?
But that one should be obvious.
So that is a business, I'm afraid to say. Or I would say, but what about, okay, I agree with you there. Maybe that was a clear one. But let's say this is, this is mine and this is yours. And this one over here has got, 2,000 positive reviews. And this one's got 1,000 positive reviews. Can I get 2,000 other people to write positive reviews, pay them, so now this one will have 3,000, and this one will have 2,000, then people will buy that one.
That's also misleading.
Huh?
That's also misleading.
That's also forbidden.
I would hope so.
What if you don't pay those reviewers? What if you encourage them? Okay, I would encourage you to try out my product, and if you like it, then review it.
That's fine. That's fine.
But if you pay them or you give them the product itself to be reviewed,
right,
then that's not allowed, right?
Yeah. So I think those are both examples, modern examples of the Gemara that we just saw just now. Nachon, you follow, because I'm misleading. I'm not just enhancing, or whatever the word. It's not enhancing. Well, it's misleading somebody else.
There would be a difference, though, between if I give you my product as a free sample and I tell you, please give me a review, and I'm hoping that I'm relying on the fact that my product is a good product and you're going to write me a good review. So now that's free advertisement,
right,
at the cost of my inventory,
right,
as opposed to saying, hey, I'll pay you, I'm not giving you a product, and you're not going to actually have my product, but just pretend you do and write the review.
Well, that would be terrible. Right? Yes, that's wrong.
So there's a big distinction between actually having the, if you pay me and you give me the product and then tell me to review it, okay, but I have the product and I used it. And,
Yeah, that's okay.
right, but if you're just saying like,
Like, a lot of
here's some
times
money, go write something.
A lot of times people don't give money. They say they give you like the percentage off, or they give you like a coupon for another product or something
Yeah.
from their
So let's say
store.
this is really not an area that I know anything about. But let's say I'm an influencer, which I'm very not. But let's say Charlie
You are
over
on YouTube right now.
yeah, hi. Let's say I'm let's say I am an influencer, and somebody gives me a shirt, right? And they give me a shirt, and then I say, "Oh, this is the most comfortable shirt I've ever worn." But I'm only saying it because they gave me this shirt and a coupon to buy, I don't know, another $500 in their shop.
And then I finish the video and I go burn the shirt.
Yeah, exactly. But I never wear it again. But people try. So I wonder if that's also part of this misleading business. To me, I think that would be a problem. Thank God it's not a situation that I would ever find myself in.
So what's the kosher way to increase in sales and stuff?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The first point that we spoke about giving out the, you can do it lost leaders. It's about being honest or dishonest. That's really what it is. I'm not allowed to be dishonest. I'm not allowed to mislead. So we've seen really out based on the 2 points we've seen so far. We'll say from point number 1, I'm allowed to, to have lost leaders. I'm allowed to draw people to my shop in any way I want, as long as it's not an unfair advantage over other people. So it's not a case of the cul-de-sac that I spoke about before, or the Pesach shop before, the Shabbat switchover. There where I have an unfair advantage. But if I, sort of an unfair advantage built into the system. But if I'm just playing by the rules and I want to, I've chosen to use this as my loss leader to draw people into my shop, that's fine, because somebody else could also do a loss leader. So that's fine. That's fair competition. That's point number 1. Point number 2, and that comes back to Pinchas's point, I can paint my arrows any color I like. And I'm painting them, and I'm going to choose colors that are going to draw the eye of a potential customer. That's fine. I'm allowed to paint things to draw the eye of a customer. So I'm allowed to draw people, and I'm allowed to advertise. What I'm not allowed to do is I'm not allowed to cover up something that doesn't work. So if it's a second-hand car that's rusted all over, I can't paint over all the rust so that you'll only realize it a month after you bought the car. So on new items, it's much easier to do it than on a second-hand item, because on a new item, you know what you're buying. On a second-hand item, there's more of a possibility that you may be hiding something. So I'm allowed to market my items, and I'm allowed to sell them, and I'm allowed to promote them, and I can take pictures, and I can draw your eye to everything, which is fine. It's covering stuff up that's a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's with selling motorcycles, there's those things that people do all the time, and it's so you get like a motorcycle with they're called like plastics or fairings on it, and the ones from the factory are quite expensive. They got a nice paint job, quality plastic. So a lot of people, what they do is they buy a cheap Chinese set, they put it on, or they take off the new ones, put on the cheap one, and they ride the motorcycle around with the Chinese set, and those get all banged up, whatever. And when it comes time to sell the motorcycle, they put on the original set that had never been on the motorcycle at all, and it looks brand new. So it's interesting. You are making something like old look new, but also people value the bodywork, the fairings from
And the bodywork itself is technically new because it wasn't used.
The bodywork is new, but it also makes the motorcycle look like it just came off the showroom.
Right.
So.
Oh my gosh. One of the reasons why I teach in Machomei is because of these crazy examples. Zachariah, that is such an interesting example. I think the question there, like you were saying, and Pinchas as well, it depends. What if the person is buying that, that pristine look? So they've got the pristine look. You follow? Maybe if they don't care about the energy, the engine that's all bashed up inside, is that possible? Would somebody be interested in that?
Yeah, I mean, you also advertise along with it. They know the miles. They know that it's used as well. So I guess you're not really trying to pass it off as a new motorcycle, but
yeah.
Well, no, you don't always know the miles. For example, the last car I bought in the States, I bought a car. The odometer said it had 140,000 miles on it. so they charge me X amount of money, right?
I see.
So I drive the car for a couple of years. It's now up to 155,000 miles, and I sell it to a friend. And I get a call from him 2 months later, and he's livid. And he says,
No.
"You should know it doesn't have 155,000 miles. You lied to me. It has 300,000 miles." And I said, "What are you talking about? It doesn't have 300,000 miles. Look at the odometer." And he says, "No, I just checked some online documents, and the documents say that the odometer has been changed, and it really is such and such amount of miles." And
Oh, so that's obviously
so they
that's
charged me
forbidden.
three times what I should have paid for that car.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, it is what it is. But these are real life things that happen.
Wow.
You can't assume that just because it says it has X amount of miles.
I'm just presenting the scenario as in like what a normal person does.
Yeah, I think, but once you can measure, assuming you can measure the mileage, I think that would be less of a problem, because it's not about painting, it's about knowing the specs. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's about covering up. But if I'm not covering up, then I'm allowed to make my product stand out. But I should stand out without covering up defaults. Okay, that's point number 2. So point number 1 is a fair competition. Nachon? That you're allowed to, as long as it's a level playing field is fine. Point number 2 is that when we're involved in marketing, you're allowed to market to make your item stick out, but you're not allowed to market it to cover up the faults. That's point number 2. Now point number 3, and our final point, is this. Very interesting. Look at this Gemara. There are 2 pieces of Gemara, both from Chulin Daf Tzadi Daled. Tell me what you think about these cases over here. Haya Rabbi Meomer al yisrahev adam lechavero lisod etzlo v'yodeh bo she'ino soed. Don't invite somebody around to your home knowing they can't come. Why? Because he'll say, "Oh, that's so nice of you." No, but you only invited them knowing they couldn't come. You follow? V'lo yarbe lo betik ravot v'yodeh bo she'ino mekabel. Don't offer them gifts knowing they won't accept them. That's because they'll have an inaccurate sort of understanding of who you are. ולא יפחת לו חביות המכורות לחנווני אלא אם כן הודיעו, ולא יאמר לחסוך שמן מפח ריקן, ואם בשביל כבודו מותר. So apparently in the olden days is we're talking about like opening a big cask of wine. It's like they would do this to make a big like fuss about it. About opening a big, like you're so important, I'm going to open this new, big barrel of wine in your honor, but I was going to open it anyway. So you're being misleading because you're giving the impression to somebody that you are kinder than you actually are. You follow? Because you're offering stuff knowing they're not going to take it, invite them for a meal, offer them gifts. When I think manipulative, I'm afraid to say, it's a terrible word, but that's really what's happening over here. Okay, that's part number 1. I want to go to part number 2 of the same sort of idea, and then let me know what you think about these cases. Oh, wow. The second case is quite a tricky one. I'm going to pause in the middle, and you'll tell me what you would do. Very embarrassing situation. Mar Zutra, the son of Rabbi Nachman, Ka'azil, he went on a walk to Mechuza. He was walking to Mechuza. Rabba v'Rabbi Safra havu ka'asu l'sichra. And Rava and Rav Safra were walking in the opposite direction to Sikara. So you have Mar Zutra going from Sikara to Mechuza, and you have Rabba and Rav Safra going from Mechuza to Sikra. You follow? And they met on the way, exactly. They met on the way. Now, when Mar Zutra met Rabba and Rav Safra, he assumed that they had come in order to meet him. You follow? So he's walking on the way. Here, this is what the name of the place is again. You got over here Sikara and you've got Mechuza, right? And then you have over here Mar Zutra is going from Sikara to Machuza, and he bumps into Rava and Rav Safra on the way, which I guess didn't happen that often. You know, like he bumped into somebody. He assumed, Mar Zutra assumed, that these holy rabbis had come to meet him. But the truth is, they hadn't come to meet him. And now they're in a very, very awkward situation. Because either they say, oh, well, it's such a pleasure to see you, but that's misleading, because we didn't really come to see him. So if I were to pretend, yes, I'm so happy we still managed to see you, we were looking for you, and now we've caught up with you, it's so great to see you, our teacher, that would show him great respect, and he'll be very happy, but it would be dishonest. But on the other hand, if they were to tell the truth, and they say, I'm sorry, Rabbi, we had no idea you were coming, I mean, that's so insulting. You follow? So it's a very tricky situation. Atem shomim?
Yeah.
So what to do? What to do? Matem choshvim? Yeah, go on. Nachshon. Nachshon.
What do you call this? Embarrassing someone is likened to murder, katadam. So
Right.
I would obviously avoid, outright telling the guy like, we did not plan to meet you at all, man. But lying is mostly forbidden in all circumstances unless it's to, establish peace between
Right.
Haverim. So, what to do? I will probably choose my words very carefully. Like, I will tell the guy, like, for example, he said that, why did the rabbis take the trouble to meet me?
Exactly.
I
My
would
gosh.
probably tell him that, what do you call this? I'll probably tell him that, oh, it's no problem. I am deliberately vague. I did not lie, and I did not embarrass the guy. So
Excellent.
I think that's the best.
Yosef, the Filipino culture knows how to navigate these situations very well.
To be very
Huh?
careful with you guys.
Yes, the Asian, yeah. Well, that was excellent. Okay, thank you. Any other solutions to this tricky situation? Let me read what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, I'm afraid to say, Rav Safra was honest, and he said, Rav Safra said to Mar Zutra that we have not come to see you. Anan lo hava yadinon deka'ati mar. We didn't know that you, Mar Zutra, were on the way. I hava yadinan, but if we did know, tvei have tarchinan, we would have worked even harder to see you. See what they did that? If we didn't know that you would come, but see how he sort of solved the problem? But then despite that, Rava said, why did you do that, Rav? Like you hurt him. Do you know what I mean? Like why did you, did you see that? Why did you say that? Da'ach leshite leda'ate. Normally, because you were, you've upset him by telling him the truth. For haka mat'inon le. And had we not, we would have been deceiving him. Had we played along with him, we would have been deceiving him. You follow? But then Rava, who has a last word over here, says, he would have been deceiving himself. You follow?
You would have been aiding and abetting.
No, so Rava, like
reinforcing.
Rava went a little bit like what you were saying, Nachon, and then Rava's saying that I'm not deceiving him. I didn't tell him what to think. He can interpret it however he wishes. You follow? So Rava and Nachshon over here have got the similar way to navigate the situation over here, and that's the last word of the story. I don't know if that means that's a more appropriate thing to do, but there seems to be a distinction between misleading somebody
and allowing them to mislead themselves.
Or not sort of allowing them to mislead themselves.
But they played into it, and by playing into it, they were allowing him to.
Yeah, also Rav Safra, you are.
Right.
It's an unresolved argument. Often in stories in the Gemara, it's not like let's say when we start a halachic passage in the Talmud. So at the end of halachic passage, I'll have the halacha ke. The halacha follows position of A, or the halacha follows position of B. Here we have a story. The two rabbis, and it's so interesting because there were two of them. It means both opinions. You follow? I mean, two different opinions about how to navigate this interaction with Mar Zutra. And you have the Rava way of dealing with the situation, and the Rav Safra way of dealing with the situation. Rav Safra, who's honest and says, Holy Rabbi, we didn't know you were coming. Had we known, we'd have worked even harder. And then Rava, you just insulted him. Says, what, I'm deceiving? But then he's got the last word. Rava, we would not have been deceiving him. He would have been deceiving himself.
Maybe the way the Gemara leaves it is it's intentionally proving the point that there is no right answer, and that it's up to us to try to do what we think is right, and whether we do the right thing or not, as long as we are trying to be considerate.
I like that very much.
Doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's a very good. Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's no answer to the question. Huh?
Teiku.
Yeah, but Teiku is, there won't be an answer, meaning you just have to figure it out. Like in every situation, you'll have to navigate it. But we do see, if we looked at the Gemara on the first Amud, and the Gemara on the second Amud, is the Gemara in the first Amud, we're talking about intentionally deceiving somebody else. Do you want to come to my house for a Shabbos meal, knowing that the guy can't come? That's deceiving somebody. Everybody would agree that's forbidden. Like making a fuss of somebody when that's not really why I'm doing something. Everybody agrees that's deceiving somebody else. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like if I'm but when they are the ones that initiated it, so then they're deceiving themselves. You follow? When I'm the one that create the scenario, if I can put it that way, you follow? I create the background to the story by the first person to speak is me. So then I can't deceive. But when you open the conversation and you misread the situation, on that situation there's debate about to what extent I have to be honest and to what extent I'm allowed to play along. You follow? Okay, and that remains a machloket. So the third point over here, the third issue, is the question of integrity. And on the issue of integrity, it's really you have to be not just you have to behave in an honest manner. Okay, that is point number 3. So we've seen 3 points. The first point is healthy marketing is permitted, but unfair advantage is forbidden. Point number 2 is when you sell a product, you're allowed to make that product stick out, but you're not allowed to cover its loss. It's more if something wrong with it. And the third point is that you're not allowed to mislead somebody else. You can't take advantage of somebody's naivety. You have to have integrity. Is that clear to everybody? Okay, I'm going to conclude with the words of the Rambam at the bottom over here. They're just over here some concerns in English that all of these I think are terrible things. Over here, a manufacturer of crisps. Isn't that great? They had a promotion which says the bag is 15% larger. The number of crisps was the same amount. They just sold the same product in a larger bag. And there's also, have you heard of like a shrinkflation? Is that what it's called? Shrinkflation? Yes. That's also a similar sort of idea. Unless you make it clear that it's a smaller size.
The ones in Israel with like the things of like nuts or like fruits and like the plastic containers, you open up and there's like giant like hemisphere in the, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know exactly what. Yes, we've all fallen for it.
Yeah, you gotta look underneath. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that is all a problem. You follow? That's. Those are just examples. They didn't fit into any of the Gemaras that we looked at, but it's similar. I want to conclude with the words of the Rambam. The Rambam over here in Hilchot Deot. Previously, we were looking at the Rambam. Like in the laws of sale. The Rambam, that was it. The Rambam sort of in a Bein Adam L'Chaviro Hilchot Deot is more about between me and myself, rather than the way I interact with other people. Asur la'adam lahanig atzmo b'divrei chakalot v'pitui v'lo yeh echad b'peh v'echad b'lev. You can't say one thing and think something else. Ela tochol kuboro. You need to be with integrity. Va'inyan shebalev hu hadavar shebepeh. What you think is what you should say. You're not allowed to mislead other people. Don't tell one thing saying it's something else. Don't tell somebody to come round to me knowing they can't come. The Gemara that we saw a few minutes ago. But to open up a barrel and give the guy the impression that I'm opening it in your honor when I had to open it anyway. Meaning you shouldn't mislead people. Even one word is forbidden. You need to speak with truth and a pure heart. That is the way to get around in this world. So, in conclusion, the Rambam is really summarized a few of the sources that we saw previously, but it's just basically in one word is you have to be a mensch. You have to have integrity. You have to have honesty. You have to tell the truth. You can't take advantage of other people. You're allowed to be involved in marketing because competition is a good thing, but it has to be within the context of being a mensch. And if you do that, then you'll be okay. Yishar Koch to everybody. Have a wonderful day.